Chapter 1. The Dusty Attic and the Whispering Pages. The relentless drumming of rain against the attic window was the only soundtrack to their boredom. Emma, her chin propped in her hands, sighed a breath that stirred the lazy dust motes dancing in the single, weak shaft of sunlight. Outside, the world was a blur of gray and green, a washed-out watercolor painting that offered little in the way of excitement. Summer holidays, which had promised endless days of sunshine and adventure, had dissolved into a damp, monotonous reality. Noah, sprawled on a tattered rug, flicked a stray pebble with his toe, his gaze lost somewhere between the grimy panes of glass and the far-off, uninspiring landscape.
"This is the worst,"
Emma declared, her voice muffled by her hands.
"Absolutely the worst. I think I've counted every single raindrop hitting the roof. It's 7,438, by the way."
Noah grunted in response, a sound that could have meant anything from agreement to profound disinterest. He was, as always, the pragmatic one, the brother who saw the world in shades of logic rather than the vibrant hues Emma conjured in her imagination. He preferred puzzles with solvable answers, not the nebulous mysteries that often occupied Emma's thoughts.
"We could tidy up a bit,"
Noah suggested, his voice lacking any genuine enthusiasm.
"Grandma always says this attic is a mess."
Emma's eyes, however, had already drifted beyond the immediate confines of their boredom. They scanned the shadowy corners of the attic, where forgotten relics of a bygone era stood sentinel. Towering stacks of hat boxes, their once proud feathers now long gone, leaned precariously. An old moth-eaten rocking horse, its painted eyes staring blankly, seemed to hold a silent, mournful vigil. The air itself was thick with a scent that was a peculiar blend of aged paper, dry wood, and something else, something indefinable, like the quiet hum of history itself. It was a smell that always promised secrets, if only one knew where to look.
"Tidying up feels like a chore,"
Emma mused, her gaze settling on a large, dark wooden chest tucked away in the farthest corner, almost entirely obscured by a draped, faded tapestry.
"But exploring is an adventure."
A flicker of interest crossed Noah's face. He had always been a reluctant adventurer, preferring the safety of the known. Still, Emma's boundless enthusiasm was often infectious. Even to his more grounded nature, he pushed himself up, brushing dust from his jeans.
"What's in that chest?"
Together, they navigated the labyrinth of forgotten possessions. Cobwebs, thick and glistening with moisture, clung to their clothes and hair, tickling their skin. Each step was a careful negotiation, a dance with the dust and the shadows. The attic, with its sloped ceilings and exposed beams, felt like a character in its own right, a silent observer of their intrusion, breathing out the stories of generations past. The single shaft of light, their only illumination, highlighted the stillness. This deep quiet settled upon everything left undisturbed for so long. As they neared the chest, its dark wood gleamed dully, hinting at a sturdiness that had withstood the passage of time. It was larger than they had initially realized, its surface carved with intricate, though now faded, patterns. Emma reached out, her fingers trailing over the cool, smooth wood. It felt ancient, imbued with a history that even the dust and cobwebs couldn't entirely conceal.
"It's locked,"
Noah observed, his fingers probing a tarnished metal clasp. Emma's brow furrowed.
"Locked? That's even more mysterious."
She ran her hands along the sides of the chest, her touch light, almost reverent. It was then, As her fingers brushed against a slightly raised section of the carving near the hinge, that she felt it, a subtle give, a tiny click that was almost swallowed by the ambient sound of the rain.
Wait!
She breathed, her voice hushed with anticipation. She pressed the spot again, and this time, with a soft groan of ancient wood, a hidden latch sprang open. The lid of the chest, heavy and reluctant, creaked upwards, revealing not a trove of pirate gold or lost jewels, but something far more intriguing. The interior of the chest was lined with what looked like aged velvet, faded to a deep, bruised purple. Nestled within this soft cushion lay a book. But it was no ordinary book. Bound in what appeared to be dark, supple leather, its cover was entirely unmarked. There was no title, no author, no publisher's name. It was as if the book had deliberately chosen to remain anonymous, its identity concealed from the casual observer. As Emma reached for it, her fingers brushed against the leather, and she felt a peculiar warmth emanating from its surface. This sensation was both surprising and strangely comforting. It was a warmth that seemed to seep into her fingertips, traveling up her arm and settling in her chest, a gentle thrum of energy.
It's a Bible,
Noah stated, his voice tinged with a hint of surprise. He leaned closer, his usual skepticism momentarily replaced by curiosity.
but I've never seen one like it.
He was right. The leather was incredibly worn, soft, and yielding to the touch, as if it had been held and cherished for centuries. The edges of the pages were gilded, though the gold had long since dulled, and the pages themselves, when Emma carefully turned one, were thin and crackly, like autumn leaves. Yet there was something else. Faint, intricate symbols were embossed on the cover, almost invisible at first glance. They were etched with a precision that spoke of skilled craftsmanship. As Noah shifted the chest to get a better angle for the light, the symbols seemed to shimmer, catching the weak sunlight with a subtle, almost ethereal glow. Emma felt an undeniable pull towards the book, a sense of something profound waiting within its silent pages. It sat heavy in her hands, not just in weight, but in presence. It radiated an ancient energy, a quiet hum that seemed to whisper of forgotten worlds, of untold tales waiting to be awakened. It felt like holding a piece of history, a vessel carrying echoes from distant eras. Noah, ever the observer, pointed to the symbols.
What do you think they mean?
Emma traced one of the embossed patterns with her fingertip. It felt smooth beneath the raised lines, almost like cool metal.
I don't know,
She admitted, her voice a soft murmur.
but they feel important.
A shiver, not of cold, but of pure, exhilarating anticipation ran down her spine. This was more than just an old book found in a dusty attic. This was a mystery, a puzzle box waiting to be unlocked, and she had a feeling that the answer lay not in logic, but in something far more magical. The rain outside seemed to recede, the drumming replaced by the quiet, insistent whisper of the book in her hands, urging her to discover its secrets. The attic, once a place of boredom, had suddenly transformed into a threshold, a gateway to an unknown adventure, and she and Noah were standing on the very edge of it. The promise of discovery, once a faint whisper, had now become a tangible presence, filling the dusty air with its electrifying potential. The weight of the unmarked Bible settled in Emma's hands, a comforting solidity that belied its ethereal aura. The leather, so soft it felt almost alive, seemed to cradle her fingers, as if it had been waiting for this very touch for an eternity. Noah, leaning closer, his brow furrowed in concentration, tried to decipher the faint markings on the cover. They weren't letters, nor were they any symbols he recognized from his school textbooks or the occasional historical documentary he'd watched. They were more organic, flowing lines that intertwined and overlapped, creating a pattern that was both complex and strangely soothing to the eye.
It's like a secret language.
Emma whispered, her voice barely disturbing the hushed quiet of the attic. She ran a finger over one of the embossed symbols, feeling the slight raised texture against her skin. It wasn't sharp, but smooth, as if worn down by countless touches over the centuries.
Maybe it's a code. Maybe it's a map.
Noah, though usually quick to dismiss Emma's flights of fancy, found himself drawn into her speculation. The book's very anonymity was a challenge to his curious mind. A Bible, a book of Scripture, usually shouted its identity from the rooftops, its title emblazoned for all to see. This one, however, was a deliberate enigma. He tilted his head, trying to catch the light at a different angle. The symbols seemed to shift, to deepen, their metallic sheen catching the weak sunlight in fleeting glints.
It's definitely old.
Noah mused, his voice taking on a thoughtful tone.
The leather is so worn, and the pages, they feel like they could crumble if you're not careful. But they're not brittle, not like old paper usually is.
He reached out and gently touched the edge of a page, its gilded edge a ghostly reminder of its former glory. The warmth Emma had felt seemed to emanate from the entire book, a subtle, pervasive heat that defied the damp chill of the attic.
It's almost like it's breathing.
Emma's eyes widened, her imagination already painting vivid pictures.
Breathing, like it's alive. Maybe it's enchanted. Like in those old fairy tales Grandma used to read, where objects had magic inside them.
She imagined the symbols on the cover pulsing with a soft inner light, the leather binding shifting and reforming like a living skin. She clutched the book tighter, a thrill of excitement mixed with a touch of apprehension coursing through her. This was no ordinary find. This was a portal.
Enchanted books are just stories, Em.
Noah said, though his tone lacked its usual conviction. He was an observer, a boy who preferred the tangible, the provable. But this book defied easy categorization. Its silence was eloquent, its blankness a canvas for endless questions. He found himself wondering about the hands that had held it before theirs, the eyes that had scanned its pages, the stories it had witnessed. Had they felt this same strange warmth? Had they seen the symbols shimmer?
But what if it's not just a story?
Emma countered, her gaze fixed on the embossed patterns.
What if this is real magic? It's a Bible, Noah. Bibles are about faith, about believing in things you can't always see. Maybe this one is just more believing.
She traced the outline of a particularly intricate symbol, a spiral that seemed to draw her in. It felt different from the others, almost as if it had a faint indentation at its very center, a place for something to be pressed. Noah's practical mind began to work.
If it's a Bible, then there must be text inside. Let's see if we can open it.
He gently took the book from Emma, his movements careful, deliberate. The leather felt cool now, the initial warmth having subsided slightly, or perhaps his own hand had warmed it. He opened the cover, and the pages, thin and delicate, rustled like dry leaves. The familiar scent of old paper, mingled with something else, something faintly sweet and earthy, filled the air. They both peered at the first page, their breath held in anticipation. The script was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't English, nor Latin, nor any language Noah recognized from his brief forays into ancient history. The letters were elegant, flowing curves and sharp angles, some looping downwards, others extending upwards like delicate tendrils. There were no capital letters, no punctuation marks that they could identify. It was a beautiful, alien script, both intimidating and fascinating.
It's writing.
Noah stated, his voice a low murmur.
But I don't know what it says.
He turned another page, then another. The text continued, unyielding in its strangeness. Interspersed with the words were intricate illustrations, delicate drawings rendered in what looked like faded ink. They depicted scenes that were both familiar and fantastical. A tree with glowing leaves, a city with spires reaching into a starry sky, figures with wings, and animals that seemed to blend the characteristics of several creatures. Emma leaned closer, her eyes wide with wonder.
Look!
She exclaimed, pointing to one of the illustrations. It showed a figure, cloaked and hooded, holding a single, radiant star in their outstretched hand. The star seemed to pulse with a gentle light, casting an otherworldly glow on the figure's face.
That's not in any Bible I've ever seen pictures of.
Noah traced the outline of the star with his finger.
It's incredibly detailed,
he admitted.
The artist was very skilled. But the language, it's completely impenetrable.
He tried to sound disappointed, to revert to his usual curious self, but the sheer mystery of it all was too compelling. He held the book open, letting the faint light from the attic window fall upon the page. The ink, though faded, seemed to possess a subtle depth, almost as if it were imbued with a faint luminescence of its own.
Maybe it's not meant to be read in the way we read other books,
Emma mused, her mind already spinning theories.
Maybe it's meant to be felt, or seen, or understood differently.
She remembered the warmth, the strange energy that had pulsed from the book.
What if the symbols on the cover are clues, and the pictures, maybe they tell a story without needing words?
Noah considered this. His analytical brain was accustomed to dissecting information, breaking it down into its constituent parts. But this book seemed to resist such dissection. It demanded a different approach, a willingness to embrace the unknown. He looked again at the cover, at the swirling, embossed patterns. They were mesmerizing, hypnotic. He'd never noticed before, but some of the lines seemed to form subtle shapes, almost like stylized animals or celestial bodies, hidden within the overall design.
It's like a puzzle box,
Noah said, his voice barely a whisper.
But instead of physical locks, it has hidden meanings.
He held the book up, the pages fanning out slightly. He noticed that the edges of the pages weren't perfectly straight. They were somewhat uneven, as if they had been deliberately cut or torn by hand, but with a precision that suggested intent rather than haste. And in some places, very faint, almost invisible lines were etched into the page edges themselves, forming tiny, recurring patterns.
Look, Noah!
Emma pointed to a particular illustration on one of the inner pages. It depicted a stylized tree, its roots digging deep into the earth, and its branches reaching toward a sky filled with what appeared to be constellations. But the constellations were not the ones they knew. They were intricate, geometric shapes that seemed to mirror the patterns on the book's cover.
The symbols! They're in the sky!
Noah leaned in, his skepticism giving way entirely to fascination. He had always been drawn to puzzles, to things that required careful observation and deduction. This unmarked Bible was the ultimate puzzle. It was a book that offered no easy answers, no familiar comforts of recognizable language. It was a whisper from the past, a riddle wrapped in leather and ink. He gently turned another page, and his eyes fell upon a passage illustrated with a shimmering silver chalice. The script surrounding it seemed to shimmer too, almost as if the ink itself was infused with some kind of metallic dust.
"It's more than just old,"
Noah said, his voice hushed with awe.
"This book, it feels important, like it holds something significant."
He carefully closed the cover, the smooth leather a stark contrast to the rough-hewn wood of the chest. The book felt heavier now, its presence more pronounced. It was no longer just an object, it was an invitation to decipher its secrets, to unravel the mystery of its unmarked cover and its alien script. Emma nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and a growing sense of responsibility.
It's like it chose us to find it.
She breathed.
Like it's been waiting for someone to understand it.
She looked at Noah, her eyes shining with a shared understanding. The rainy afternoon, which had begun as a testament to their boredom, had transformed into the beginning of something extraordinary. The dusty attic, with its forgotten treasures, had yielded its most profound secret, a book that was both sacred and utterly unique, a testament to a history that was yet to be discovered. The unmarked Bible, resting in their hands, was a silent promise of adventures yet to unfold, a whisper of magic in the mundane, and they were ready to listen. The rain, which had seemed to drone endlessly, now felt like a distant drumbeat, a soundtrack to their newfound quest, urging them forward into the unknown, guided by the silent shimmering allure of the unmarked pages. They both knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that their summer holidays had just taken a turn for the truly remarkable, a turn into the heart of a mystery that was as deep and as ancient as the very wood of the attic itself. The book was a key, and the attic was merely the antechamber to a world of hidden knowledge waiting to be unlocked by their curious minds and adventurous spirits. The aged leather of the unmarked Bible felt strangely warm beneath Emma's fingertips, a familiar sensation now, like a gentle embrace from an old friend. She turned the book over, her heart thrumming with a mixture of anticipation and a touch of nervousness. The intricate symbols on the cover, which had seemed so enigmatic moments before, now felt like a preamble to something even more profound. Noah watched her, his own curiosity a palpable force in the quiet attic, his gaze fixed on the book as if willing it to reveal its secrets. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken expectancy. With a deep breath, Emma carefully ran her fingers along the edge of the cover, searching for any seam, any imperfection that might suggest a hidden mechanism. Her touch, hesitant at first, grew more confident as her fingers explored the subtle contours of the binding. There, almost imperceptible, was a slight ridge, a faint line that ran along the spine and down the side. It was so subtle, so perfectly blended with the aged leather, that it was easily missed. But Emma's touch, guided by an instinct she couldn't explain, found it. She pressed gently, and with a soft click, a section of the cover, no larger than her palm, sprang open. It wasn't a hollowed-out space in the leather itself, but rather a small, intricately carved wooden panel that had been concealed within the binding. The wood was a deep, rich mahogany, polished smooth by time and touch, and it opened outwards on tiny, almost invisible hinges. Nestled within this hidden compartment, resting on a bed of faded velvet that had once been a vibrant crimson, lay a single piece of parchment. It was yellowed with age, its edges slightly frayed, and the faint scent of dried herbs and something akin to old parchment, but sweeter, more floral, wafted from it. Emma reached for it with utmost care, her fingers brushing against the delicate fibers of the aged paper. As she lifted it, she noticed that the script upon it wasn't merely ink. The letters seemed to possess a subtle luminescence, a soft, internal glow that pulsed faintly in the dim attic light. It was as if the words themselves were alive, imbued with an energy that made them stand out from the page. Noah, drawn closer by the almost magical glow, peered over Emma's shoulder. The script was unlike anything they had seen on the pages of the Bible. It was more ornate, the curves more fluid, the strokes more deliberate, as if each letter had been painstakingly painted with a brush dipped in starlight. There were no harsh angles, only graceful arcs and sweeping lines that intertwined to form words that seemed to dance before their eyes.
"What does it say, Em?"
Noah whispered, his voice barely audible. He knew the language in the Bible was incomprehensible, but this was different. The glowing script felt like an invitation, a key designed to unlock whatever lay within the book's mysterious pages. Emma's eyes traced the luminous characters, her brow furrowed in concentration. The words seemed to shimmer and shift, playing tricks on her vision, yet a strange familiarity began to dawn. It wasn't that she knew the language, but rather that she could feel its meaning. It resonated deep within her, a silent whisper that bypassed the need for translation.
It says,
She began, her voice trembling slightly with awe.
"Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith."
As she spoke the words aloud, the faint glow of the inscription intensified for a fleeting moment, bathing their faces in a warm, ethereal light. The air in the attic grew still, as if holding its breath, and a faint, almost imperceptible hum seemed to emanate from the book itself. Noah felt a prickling sensation on his skin, like the static electricity before a storm, but this was gentler, more profound.
"Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith."
Noah repeated slowly, tasting the words. They sounded ancient, like pronouncements from a forgotten prophecy.
"What name? What tale?"
He looked back at the Bible, then at the parchment. This wasn't just a hidden compartment. It was a deliberate clue, a carefully placed breadcrumb leading them further into the enigma. Emma carefully placed the parchment back into its velvet-lined alcove, her hand lingering for a moment. The glow had receded, leaving the letters looking like finely etched gold. Still, the feeling of magic, of something far beyond ordinary comprehension, remained.
"I don't know, Noah,
She admitted, her voice hushed.
but it feels important, like a command or a secret instruction."
She looked at the unmarked Bible again, the embossed symbols on its cover seeming to swirl with newfound significance. They were no longer just decorative patterns. They were part of a language, a story waiting to be deciphered. Noah reached out and gently touched the open compartment, his fingers tracing the smooth wood.
This is incredible, Em. I've never seen anything like it. It's like this book is a puzzle box, and this is the first piece we found.
He looked at the Bible's pages, which lay open to a passage filled with the strange flowing script. Maybe the language inside. Maybe that's the tale. And the name. Maybe that's something we have to discover first. Emma nodded, her mind racing. The Bible had felt special from the moment she'd picked it up, its weight and warmth hinting at something more than just scripture. But this hidden compartment, this glowing inscription, had confirmed it. This was no ordinary book. It was a gateway, a key to a history of faith, a tale that had been carefully preserved and hidden away. She imagined the hands that had carved that compartment, the person who had written those glowing words, the long journey this book must have taken to reach them in this dusty attic.
It's like it's a story within a story.
Emma mused, her eyes shining.
The Bible is one story, but this book itself has a story, a secret one that we're only just starting to uncover.
She looked at Noah, a shared excitement passing between them. The initial apprehension had melted away, replaced by an insatiable curiosity. This was the kind of adventure she had only read about in books, and now it was unfolding right in front of them. Noah carefully closed the wooden panel, the click echoing softly in the stillness. He then gently shut the cover of the Bible, the soft leather closing around the parchment and its glowing message. The book felt different now, heavier, with secrets more substantial than before. It was no longer just an old family heirloom discovered in an attic. It was an artifact of immense significance, a tangible link to a past that was clearly far more complex and magical than they had ever imagined.
We have to figure out what it means,
Noah stated, his voice firm with determination. His curious mind, which had initially struggled with the book's inexplicable nature, was now fully engaged, eager to unravel the threads of this mystery.
The name, the tale, live the faith. That last part feels like the most important, like it's the goal or the consequence.
Emma traced the outline of the unmarked Bible with her finger, the smooth leather cool beneath her touch. A shiver, not of fear, but of exhilaration, ran down her spine. She felt a deep sense of connection to this book, as if it had been waiting for them, waiting for her to find it. It was a calling, a whispered invitation to step beyond the ordinary and into a world of wonder. The dusty attic, once a place of forgotten things, had become a threshold, and the unmarked Bible, with its hidden inscription, was the key. The rain outside had softened to a gentle patter. This soothing rhythm seemed to underscore the dawning realization. Their summer had just become an epic quest, and this mysterious book was their guide. The adventure had truly begun. The words of the inscription, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," hung in the air, imbued with a new resonance now that Noah had spoken them aloud. Emma felt a tremor, a subtle vibration that seemed to originate from the very core of the unmarked Bible. It wasn't an aggressive shake, but a deep, resonant thrum, like a giant heart beating beneath her fingertips. The symbols on the cover, which had seemed to glow faintly before, now pulsed with a more insistent luminescence. They were no longer mere etchings on aged leather. They were conduits, channels through which an unseen energy was flowing. The light they emitted was a soft, pearlescent white, pushing back the shadows of the dusty attic and bathing the immediate vicinity in an almost sacred glow. It was an interior light, seeming to originate from within the book itself, as if the ancient pages had finally found their voice, or perhaps their life. A shiver, entirely independent of the attic's cool air, traced its way down Emma's spine. It was the kind of shiver that came not from fear, but from the profound recognition of something extraordinary, something that defied rational explanation. Beside her, Noah's breath hitched. His eyes, wide with wonder, were fixed on the book. The usual skepticism that often flickered there was absent, replaced by an unadulterated awe. He had always been the more grounded of the two, the one who sought logical explanations. But here, in this dim, forgotten space, logic seemed to have taken a temporary leave of absence, and wonder had taken its place. Then it happened. A breath of air, impossibly cool and carrying the faint, intoxicating aroma of spices she'd only ever encountered in her grandmother's spice rack. Cinnamon, cardamom, something floral and exotic she couldn't quite place, wafted through the attic. It was a gentle breeze, an indoor zephyr that stirred the motes of dust dancing in the shaft of sunlight, and more significantly, rustled the pages of the open Bible. The sound was soft, a papery whisper that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Emma instinctively reached out, her fingers brushing against the ancient parchment. The script, still glowing with that inner light, seemed to ripple as the pages turned. The movement wasn't violent, but deliberate, as if an unseen hand were gently guiding the pages to a specific passage. Noah leaned closer, his gaze glued to the illuminated text. As the pages settled, the light intensified on a particular passage. Emma gasped, a small, involuntary sound that broke the hushed silence. On the page, where before there had only been the flowing, luminous script, a faint image began to coalesce. It was hazy at first, like mist forming on a cold window pane, but it sharpened with astonishing speed. The image was a scene rendered with a clarity that far surpassed anything Emma had ever witnessed. It was a market square bustling with people. The architecture was foreign, with domed roofs and intricate carvings on stone buildings. The people themselves wore robes and tunics of vibrant colors, their faces animated as they bartered and conversed. She recognized fragments of the scene, a fleeting sense of déjà vu that tugged at the edges of her memory. It was like a dream she'd had long ago, or perhaps a story she'd heard whispered in Sunday school, a tale of faraway lands and ancient times. But this was no hazy recollection. It was a vivid, almost tangible tableau unfolding before her eyes on the surface of the parchment.
Emma, do you see that?
Noah whispered, his voice barely audible, his eyes fixed on the scene. He pointed a trembling finger.
That man, he's wearing a tunic like in the pictures from my history book. The ones of ancient Rome. But look at the colors and the way they're all speaking. It's not like any language I know.
Emma nodded, unable to speak. The image shifted subtly. A woman, her face kind and gentle, knelt beside a child. The child's hand, small and delicate, was reaching out towards a basket filled with what looked like golden dates. The woman was speaking to the child, her lips moving, but no sound emerged. Yet Emma felt as if she could understand. It was a wordless communication, a feeling of warmth, of reassurance, of love. The air around the book grew warmer, not uncomfortably so, but with a comforting embrace that seemed to emanate from the depicted scene. The inscription on the parchment, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," seemed to hum with a new significance. The tale was no longer an abstract concept. It was unfolding before them, a glimpse into a world that was both familiar and utterly alien. The magic, once a subtle whisper, was now a tangible presence, weaving itself into the fabric of the dusty attic, transforming it into a chamber of ancient wonders.
It's like a story is playing out.
Emma finally managed to articulate, her voice hushed with reverence.
But it's not just words. It's like we're seeing it.
She looked at Noah, her eyes wide with a dawning understanding.
Remember what you said? That the language in the Bible was incomprehensible? Maybe this is how we're meant to understand it. Not just by reading, but by experiencing it.
The image on the page continued to evolve. The market scene gave way to a desert landscape, vast and sun-baked, with camels silhouetted against a fiery sunset. Then it transitioned to a scene of a grand feast, tables laden with exotic fruits and overflowing goblets, with people gathered in joyous celebration. Each transition was seamless, each scene rendered with an almost photographic realism. The sense intensified, the aroma of spices mingling with the faint, sweet smell of ripe fruit and the earthy scent of well-worn leather. It was an assault on the senses, but not an overwhelming one. It was an invitation, a gentle tug into a world that felt both ancient and vibrantly alive. Noah, usually so quick to analyze, seemed content to simply observe, his scientific mind momentarily suspended in the face of such undeniable wonder. He reached out, his fingertips hovering just above the page, as if afraid to break the spell.
It's like looking through a window,
he murmured.
A window into another time, another place.
He looked back at the symbols on the Bible's cover, which continued to glow, their light steady and warm.
And the book, it's the frame, or maybe the glass. And
Emma felt a profound sense of connection to the book, a feeling that transcended mere ownership or discovery. It was as if the book had recognized something in her, a readiness, a willingness to engage with its secrets. The inscription, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," now seemed less like a cryptic riddle and more like a series of instructions, a path laid out for them. The name remained elusive, a puzzle piece still missing from the intricate picture. But the tale was beginning to reveal itself, not through dry prose, but through vibrant, moving images that stirred something deep within her soul. The gentle breeze continued to swirl around them, carrying with it the faint echo of distant music, the murmur of voices speaking in languages long forgotten, the laughter of children at play. The attic, with its cobwebs and forgotten relics, had been transformed. It was no longer just a repository of the past. It was a nexus, a point where time and space seemed to converge. The magic wasn't just in the book. It was in the air, in the very atmosphere of the room, sparked into existence by the simple act of reading those ancient words. Emma traced the outline of the luminous script with her gaze. The letters, which had once seemed so foreign, now felt strangely familiar, as if she had known them her entire life. It was a sensation that bypassed the intellect and spoke directly to her intuition. The "Live the Faith" part of the inscription echoed in her mind, a gentle but persistent call to action. It implied that understanding the name and knowing the tale were not ends in themselves, but prerequisites for something more. They were steps on a journey leading towards a deeper purpose, a commitment to something greater than themselves. Noah, meanwhile, was captivated by the shifting imagery. His gaze followed a flock of iridescent birds taking flight against a twilight sky.
"Look, Emma,
He said, his voice filled with quiet wonder.
the detail, it's incredible. The way the light catches their feathers, it's not like a painting, it's alive.
He paused, his brow furrowed in thought.
This must be a form of magic, a way of recording and sharing stories that goes beyond anything we know."
The implications of what they were witnessing began to settle upon Emma. This wasn't just a discovery, it was an unveiling. The unmarked Bible, once a mere curiosity, was proving to be far more. It was a vessel, a keeper of secrets, a conduit to a hidden world. The magic that had been dormant for so long was now awake, and it had chosen them, or perhaps they had stumbled upon it at precisely the right moment. The rain outside had ceased its drumming, and a shaft of sunlight, now more direct, pierced through the attic window, illuminating the scene on the page with an even greater brilliance. It was as if the heavens themselves were acknowledging the awakening of this ancient power, a power that promised to reshape their understanding of the world and perhaps of themselves. The initial awe was slowly being replaced by a profound sense of responsibility. This wasn't just an adventure, it was a calling, a sacred trust. The first whisper of magic had become a chorus, and they were standing at its very heart. The luminous scene on the pages of the unmarked Bible pulsed, drawing Emma in with an almost magnetic force. The market square, the desert, the joyous feast. Each tableau was a vibrant tapestry woven with threads of light and sound. It was more than just looking, it was an invitation. The air thrummed with an energy that seemed to seep from the very parchment, an energy that spoke of ancient stories and forgotten wonders. Her fingers, guided by an impulse she couldn't articulate, trembled as they hovered just above the illuminated image. It was a scene of a woman offering a child a cluster of glistening dates, her face radiant with a love that transcended time and language. The desire to touch, to connect with this moment, was overwhelming.
"Emma?"
Noah's voice was a soft murmur, barely disturbing the charged silence of the attic. He, too, was mesmerized, his usual scientific detachment replaced by a profound sense of awe. He had spent his life dissecting the world, breaking it down into observable facts and logical sequences. But this defied all logic. It was pure, unadulterated magic, unfolding before their very eyes. Emma didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the page, on the gentle smile of the woman, on the innocent wonder in the child's eyes. The inscription, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," echoed in her mind. The tale was no longer a distant concept. It was here now, a living, breathing entity within the pages of the book. And the name, still a mystery, seemed to be the key that unlocked it all. She felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to bridge the gap between their reality and the reality depicted on the page. It was a leap of faith, a surrender to the unknown. Her fingertips brushed against the glowing surface. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't the rough texture of aged parchment, nor the smooth coolness of ink. It was warm and soft, like touching a sunbeam or a whispered secret. As her skin made contact, a tremor ran through the book, far more intense than the gentle thrumming they had felt earlier. The luminous script flared, a blinding white light that seemed to engulf them. The dusty attic, with its familiar shadows and forgotten treasures, began to waver, to distort. The solid wooden beams of the roof seemed to melt, the cobweb-laden rafters dissolving into a kaleidoscope of swirling colors. It was as if the world itself was being unraveled, its threads pulled apart and rewoven into something new, something extraordinary. A dizzying sensation washed over Emma, a feeling of being simultaneously adrift and anchored. The floor beneath her feet seemed to vanish, replaced by a sensation of falling, yet without the fear of impact. It was a gentle descent, a surrender to a force far greater than themselves. Noah gasped beside her, his hand instinctively reaching out, his fingers finding hers in the swirling chaos. His grip was tight, a shared anchor in the tempest of light and sensation. The scent of spices intensified, filling their lungs with an intoxicating aroma, cinnamon, cardamom, frankincense, and something else, something wild and sweet, like blossoms after a spring rain. The air vibrated with a low hum, a resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. The whispering pages had become a roaring symphony, a chorus of ancient voices singing an unknown yet strangely familiar song. Images flashed before their eyes, not on the page anymore, but all around them. Desert sands stretching to an endless horizon, starry skies filled with constellations they had never seen, bustling cities with towering spires that pierced the heavens.
Emma
Closed her eyes for a brief moment, not out of fear, but out of an overwhelming need to process the sheer intensity of it all. She could feel Noah's presence beside her, a steady warmth amidst the swirling vortex. The inscription, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," played on repeat in her mind, no longer just words, but a mantra guiding them through this extraordinary transition. The name was still hidden. The true identity of the magic they were experiencing remained a mystery. But the tale was now unfolding not just before them, but through them. They were no longer observers. They were participants. The feeling of falling subsided, replaced by a gentle settling, as if they had landed on something soft and yielding. The swirling lights gradually coalesced, the cacophony of sounds softened, and the intoxicating scents began to fade, leaving behind a faint, sweet fragrance. Emma dared to open her eyes. The attic was gone. They were no longer in the dusty, forgotten space above her grandmother's house. Instead, they stood on soft, springy grass, bathed in the warm, golden light of a setting sun. The air was fresh and clean, carrying the gentle scent of wildflowers. Before them lay a landscape that seemed plucked from a dream, rolling hills dotted with ancient olive trees, a winding river sparkling under the twilight sky, and in the distance the majestic silhouette of a city with gleaming white walls and towers that reached for the heavens. Noah's breath hitched. He looked around, his eyes wide with disbelief, then down at his own hands, as if to confirm his reality. The skepticism that had always been a part of him was nowhere to be seen, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated wonder. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the petals of a vibrant blue flower growing near his feet. It was real, the texture, the color, the delicate fragrance. It was all undeniably real. "Emma," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion.
Where? Where are we?
Emma could only shake her head, a slow, dawning realization spreading through her. They had done it. They had answered the call of the whispering pages, spoken the words, and now they were living the tale. The unmarked Bible, which had been clutched tightly in her hands moments ago, was still there, but it felt different. It was no longer just a book. It was a portal, a key that had unlocked a hidden world. The symbols on its cover no longer pulsed with an internal light. They seemed to absorb the ambient glow of their new surroundings, their luminescence subdued yet steady. They had leaped into the unknown, and the unknown had welcomed them with open arms, and the ordinary day had been shattered, replaced by an extraordinary adventure. The whisper of magic had become a roaring call, and they were standing at its very heart, ready to discover what lay beyond. The inscription, "Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith," had been their guide, and now, as they stood on the threshold of this new reality, Emma knew their journey had just begun. The name remained a mystery, a secret waiting to be uncovered, but the tale was unfolding around them, vast and beckoning, and the faith they would need to navigate this wondrous, impossible world. Noah pointed towards the distant city.
Look at the architecture, Emma. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The lines, the symmetry. It's beautiful, but it's also ancient. It feels like we've stepped back in time.
He turned to her, his eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and trepidation.
Did it bring us here?
Emma nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and a touch of fear.
I think so, Noah. When I touched the image, everything dissolved. It was like falling, but not falling. And then, this.
She looked down at the Bible in her hands, its worn leather cover now seeming like a compass pointing them toward their next destination.
The inscription,
she murmured, her voice filled with newfound understanding.
"Speak the name, know the tale, live the faith." We spoke the words, and now we're living the tale. The name must be the key to understanding everything, to perhaps even finding our way back.
The gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the olive trees, carrying with it the faint sound of distant music. A melody played on instruments they couldn't identify, yet which stirred something deep within them, a sense of longing and familiarity. The sky above was a breathtaking canvas of oranges, pinks, and purples as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. It was a scene of profound peace, yet it thrummed with an unspoken energy, a promise of wonders yet to be revealed. They stood there for a long moment, simply taking it all in, the weight of their discovery settling upon them. The attic, their home, their ordinary lives. They felt 1,000,000 miles away, a fading memory. This was real as the grass beneath their feet and the sky above them. The magic that had been a subtle whisper in the dusty attic was now a palpable force, an integral part of this new reality.
So,
Noah said, breaking the silence, his voice gaining a touch of its usual analytical tone, though it was now laced with wonder.
if this is the tale, then we need to figure out the name and how to live the faith. It sounds like a quest, doesn't it? Emma
Smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes.
It is, Noah. It's a quest, and we're going to have to figure it out together.
She held up the unmarked Bible.
This is our map, our guide, and I have a feeling that everything we need to know is right here, waiting for us to discover it.
As if in response to her words, a soft light began to emanate from the symbols on the cover of the Bible, a gentle, guiding glow that seemed to illuminate a path leading towards the distant city. It wasn't a blinding light, but a warm, inviting beacon, urging them forward. The journey had begun, and though the path ahead was uncertain, Emma felt a surge of courage and determination. They had stepped through a doorway they never knew existed, and now there was no turning back. The unknown, once a source of apprehension, now held the promise of incredible discovery. They were ready. They were on their way,